My recording. I have my clapper.
Hi, would you please state your name?
My name is Tillery.
Thank you. What was your relation to Corporal James Doil Rader?
I was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 4th Marines Charlie Company, 2nd Platoon, and James Rader was a squad leader in that platoon when I got there.
So you were in the same platoon?
Yes.
And you were under him in rank?
I think he was in 1st Squad and I was in 3rd Squad.
Okay. So, do you know, never mind. Do you recall when you met him?
Yes, I do. I arrived in Vietnam in November, probably around the 20th, 1968, and Charlie Company was out on an operation in the mountains, and we waited around 3 or 4 days, and they came back. They had been in the bush for probably a couple of weeks on a search and destroy mission. And when they got back, I didn't know anybody, just a few guys that I went over with. We were all new, and we had to meet our squad leaders and our fire team leaders and a few other people in the platoon. At that time, I met James, and he seemed to be one of the guys that was very helpful. When you first get to Vietnam and they hand out your equipment, you receive a flak jacket and a helmet and your rifle and your pack and your canteens and your magazines and your ammo. And you normally get 2 canteens for your personal use. And in the jungle of Vietnam, you need 5 when you go on patrol. And I remember James coming over, me being a new guy, and him, a person that would look out for the other person, handed me a canteen and said, "Here, you'll need this." At the time, I didn't know what they were talking about. But I finally realized what he had done was pretty good to give someone else something that you had. And James was on his 2nd tour in Vietnam, and he was a corporal, and I was just a PFC, a private first class. So he kind of looked up to those guys. They'd been in country a long time, and he was one of those guys that would give you some information to pass on to the younger guys so they could learn. That was the way he was.
You said he was on his 2nd tour. Does that mean he was in Vietnam twice?
He had done his first 13 months and went back home, spent some time with his family, probably here in Yorktown, and decided he wanted to go back to Vietnam. And he was on his 2nd tour. I think he'd been there, I'm not quite sure, 8 or 9 months or something like that on his 2nd tour before he was killed.
So he was there for about a year and a half in total?
At least.
Wow. Because he decided to go back, would you say that he supported the war?
Yes. Yes, he did. I would say that. There were a lot of mixed emotions, especially the time of 1968.
Did he express his opinion about the war verbally?
I don't remember. Like I say, I only knew him for 2 or 3 weeks there before he was killed, so I never really had a chance to sit down and discuss that.
Was there any difference? Did you notice any difference in his behavior when you were at camp or when you were in the jungle?
I think most of the Marines, when they get back to the rear area, like to relax, like to unwind. It's a time to do that. And when you go out on an operation, it's strictly business. And James's squad leader he had before he became squad leader was a fellow that was a mentor of mine that actually took over his squad after he was killed. His name was Robert Rodriguez. And Rod was strictly a no nonsense when it came to being in the jungle or in the bush, as they called it. And James was that way also. And when you got out there, everything was serious. it was life or death. I mean, let's face it. You better be paying attention and know what you're doing, and that's the way James was, and he learned that from Rod.
So he adopted the same outlook as
Oh,
his
yeah.
predecessor. Do you have any fond memories of James?
Just that he was a generous person, and he did what he did when I first met him, and everybody that I talked to that knew him better than I did, especially Rodriguez, always thought he was one of the good guys. I mean, there are a few guys out there, and you always have that 5 or 10% who are problems makers, but James was a very good person.
So he was well known and well liked.
Oh, very much so.
Yes. If you had the chance to speak to him today, is there anything you would like to tell him?
It's a tough question. James was one of quite a few that we lost over there, and you just wish that it would never happen to any of them. But that's what happens in war.
Yes. If you know, did he enlist voluntarily or was he drafted?
He enlisted.
He enlisted. Did he ever go to college?
I don't know that. I went down to I was notified about a year and a half ago about a disabled American veterans chapter in Cape Coral, Florida. And they found out that I knew James Rader, and the chapter was named after James Rader. Apparently his family, after they left Yorktown, moved to Cape Coral, Florida.
Right.
And then down there, his father must have been active in the community, and they passed on James's relationship down there to the disabled American veterans. Well, they ended up adopting him and making him the name of the chapter, the James Doil Rader chapter.
And that was chapter 18, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Mm-hmm. And
So he's the namesake
yes.
for the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that was the Disabled Veterans Association?
Disabled American Veterans, yes.
Disabled American Veterans. Have they done anything to commemorate that since then?
I was down there probably about 4 or 5 months ago and went by there, and it was closed. The day I was there, I wanted to go in and see how everything was going, but I missed it by a day. But there's a lady down there, her name is Donna Gerber. I put her in touch with your class, and she was, if you have anything that you need to know, she's very good on the history of what they did for James down there.
Right, and I read, if I remember correctly, that there is a local memorial site in Cape Coral,
Yes.
Florida, and that his name is also related to that memorial there.
Yes. I got to meet his brother. His brother came to the dedication of the chapter, and he lives in Key West, down in the Keys. And I met him, and seemed to be a real nice fellow, just like his brother.
Was his brother older or younger than him?
He was younger.
Younger. So he had a good memory of his brother.
Oh, yes.
That's good. Do you know if Doyle was married, had a family?
I don't know that.
Okay. Do you have any personal stories you would like to share besides the canteen?
No, not really. Not on James. Like I said, I didn't have the opportunity to get to know him.
Right. Because you said you were not in the same exact platoon, did you say?
Oh, yes, we were. We were very close. Matter of fact, I was only probably 30 feet from him when he was killed.
Did you suffer any injuries that day?
No, I didn't.
You did not. That's good. How long were you in Vietnam?
13 months.
And you did not go back?
No.
How were you received when you came home?
The Vietnam War is different than the other wars, like Korean War, World War II. When you go over as a single person or one Marine, and when you get there, you don't go over as a group. So that's kind of, and when you leave singly, not a group as a group. So it was kind of And you get over there, you're a new guy, and then you spend your time there, and then you're released and you come home. And when I came home, let me back up a little bit. When you're over there, your diet totally changes. You eat nothing but sea rations out of a can. You get used to that. And when I got home, my mother would, naturally glad to see me and everything, would make me these big meals and everything, and I couldn't digest that food. It was really strange, and it took me like a month before I could
to transition and adapt, because I'm sure there is a huge amount of adaptation going on between the transition of going to and coming back.
Oh yeah, and there's no fanfares or anything like that when you get back. Your family's glad to see you, but that's about it.
When you came home, who did you come home to?
I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and I had my mother, my stepfather, and my cousins and aunts and uncles. I had a big family. So.
Did you have any family members, immediate or distant, that also went to Vietnam?
I had a stepbrother that went.
Was he there at the same time?
No, he went up probably about 2 years after me.
Was he in the Marines also?
No, he was in the Army.
How long was he there?
He was in Vietnam for a year.
Okay. So you said you were stationed there for 13 months. When you were young, did you picture yourself in the Marines?
And I think I did. I wanted to become a Marine, and I did. And there was a few other things in my life that I always wanted to do, and that was one of them. But you never expect what war is. So.
Did you continue serving after the war?
Yes, I did. I signed up for a 4-year duty station, 4-year enlistment, and I came back from Vietnam. I came to Portsmouth, Virginia, and from there I was assigned to an admiral's staff. And I did another year or so on the staff, and then I got a 14-month early release. So I got out early and went back to Ohio and became a police officer.
Well, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
When you said you had a 14-month early release, did you retire?
No, what was happening is at the time they were cutting the Marine Corps in half, and the war was coming to an end, and they were cutting everything back. So they asked the ones who had already served if they wanted to get out early. They could, so I took advantage of that.
So it was an opportunity.
Yes.
What were your personal experiences like in Vietnam? Any stories?
A lot of stories, a lot of good ones and a lot of bad ones. Got to meet a lot of nice Marines, good guys, and it's funny that you spend such a short period of your life with these guys. Some of them 2 months, some of them 6 months, some of them 13 months. But you gain a bond that's very close. As a matter of fact, we have some mini reunions. Oops. Thanks, Josh. We have some mini reunions that come to my house, and once a year in March.
Every year?
Every year.
And when did you start the reunions?
Probably about 10 years ago. Here's a picture of a bunch of them that came probably 2 or 3 years ago.
And you all have your jackets?
Oh yeah.
Do you have like a name for your group? For your
Charlie
reunion?
Boys.
That's amazing.
We're all in Charlie Company. And I think in this picture right here, let me count them here. 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That picture right there is 10 purple hearts, 2 bronze stars, and a silver star.
Wow.
Combat veterans. This fella right here Sal Santangelo was his name. He was probably the luckiest person in Vietnam. Sal was, in one day, was shot in the head in the helmet. The bullet went in his helmet, came out the back of his helmet, and never touched his head. It hit the helmet liner and went around the helmet liner and came out the backside. And he was working on a friend of his. This guy was shot in the foot, and Sal was bent over working on his foot when the enemy shot Sal in the head. And he said he felt the jerk. And the guy said, "Sal, you've been shot." And he said he didn't want to take his helmet off because he thought his brains were going to be in his helmet. But he took it off and felt around, and he was okay.
And so he was known as the luckiest.
That's only the beginning. And in about an hour after that, we were completely surrounded, and we were pulling us out under emergency evacuation. And here he was, taking his friend and putting him in a helicopter. They put a bunch of them in a helicopter, and it took off. And as it was going up, the NVA shot it down. And it flipped over and rolled down an embankment, caught on fire. Only 3 guys got out, and Sal was one of them, with a broken leg.
In the same day?
Within an hour.
Wow.
So, yes, there were some good experiences and some bad ones, and that was one of them. This book right here, Loon, is about that battle. And
that specific battle?
Yep. Lasted for 3 days, from June 4th, 5th, and 6th of 1968. And,
wow.
But this fella here won a Bronze Star, lost his thumb on a loon. Sal was wounded and shot out of the helicopter. Jack was wounded. And this is Jack Mcclane, the fellow who wrote the book. He was the first Vietnam veteran to graduate from Harvard. And
wow.
I got some other pictures of him too. Matter of fact, here's one of them.
Did he attend Harvard before or after the war?
After. He was the first Vietnam veteran to graduate from Harvard.
Wow.
And, he was in 60 mortars. That's a picture of him right there. And like I say, the bond that you get between the bond we get between us is forever. So.
Right. If you don't mind, we're going to take a short break.
Sure. The next day was a ceasefire, so that was pretty good. It was Christmas Day. We were up on the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone, which separates North and South Vietnam. And we had a whole battalion there, about 1,100 men. And we were standing in security up there while they were building another base farther south than where we were at. And on Christmas Day, again, as I say, it was a ceasefire. There was a C-130 plane flying overhead, playing Christmas carols. And it was, everybody just standing there watching this plane fly around, listening to the Christmas music. Strangest thing.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. Yes.
What were the military bases there like?
I have some pictures of them. This is not really a good picture, but that's a bunker. And
Those were your quarters?
Yes, this was in Chu Lin, which was the farthest east base in South Vietnam. And we were up there for about a month in March of '68. And what this was, we stayed up there and helped build these bunkers. And you could probably put a dozen men in each one of these bunkers. That was the good part. The bad part was that we got hit with artillery just about every day from North Vietnam.
Because it was so close to the line?
Yes. And I have another picture here somewhere of a base that I was close to. It was called Con Tien. And there's a lot of history on Con Tien, 66, 67, and 68. It was the most northern base in the center of South Vietnam. And there were a lot of activity, battles there, the battles of Con Tien. And then in 68 is when you had the Tet Offensive of 68, which all the towns. Saigon was hit, Da Nang was hit, Phu Bai was hit, and then the major battle of Khe Sanh, which lasted 88 days. They were under siege. Khe Sanh is on the farthest eastern base in South Vietnam, and that's where the Marines of the 26th Marines, the 9th Marines, were surrounded for 88 days and held out, but there was a lot of men killed on both sides, both Marines and North Vietnamese soldiers.
Mm-hmm. So did you attend college when you came back?
Yes, I did. After I got out, I went to Youngstown State University.
In Ohio?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What did you major in?
At the time, it was engineering.
Did you get an engineering?
I got an associate degree, yes. I was a surveyor for years.
Really?
So yeah. I started off with police work, and I was working swing shift. And I couldn't go to school, so I got out of that business and went into surveying and was going to school at night.
Night classes?
Mm-hmm.
I apologize for my jumpiness in the order of my questions.
That's okay.
What was the very first thing you did when you got home?
That's a good question. It was kind of like I wanted to see my friends and I wanted to see my family, of course. Like I said, I came from a small farm town in Ohio, and everybody knew everybody. So when you went into town, you know, there wasn't a stranger in town. So
That sounds nice.
it's very nice. Still like it hasn't changed at all.
But you don't live up there.
No.
You live down in North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. I live in Knott's Island, North Carolina now.
Did you support the war personally?
I never, at that time when you're 18 and 19 years old, and someone tells you to go, especially back in the 60s, I thought it was my duty to serve. I know there were a lot of people that at that time, especially the protest march and everything, and I lived right close to, when I came home, Kent State University was only 40 miles from where I grew up. And there was a moment there in history where they were protesting the war in Vietnam, and the National Guard got involved and was protecting the university from the riots, or the protesters. And the protesters decided to turn on the National Guard, and they came towards them, and the National Guard opened fire and killed 5 or 6 students. And it's called the Kent State Massacre. And there was a girl that was killed there that was lived about 7 miles from where I grew up. And she was not even part of the protesters. She was just walking from class to class on campus and caught a stray round. Yep.
Did you know her personally?
No.
But that happened at the college you attended?
That was Kent State. I went to Youngstown State.
Oh, okay. Did you, as an 18-year-old fighting because it was a personal sense of duty, did you know the reasons why the war was going on or why you were fighting?
No, as they told us, it was communist aggression. At that time, communism was spreading throughout the world, and we were told that if we didn't stop it somewhere, it would be in our backyard someday. So.
Did you understand what communism meant, what it was?
Pretty much so. Yeah, I mean, we had our freedoms in America, and as far as communism went, you didn't have any freedoms.
Right.
And so.
It was as simple as that.
Pretty much so.
Did your opinion change as you fought?
I think after I came back, it changed. After I started to see, I think the realization was 58,000, 200 or 300 people died, lost their lives in Vietnam. For what?
And it wasn't worth anything?
I don't believe it now. I think it was senseless.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Did the people you fought with share the same opinion?
We all fought together as Marines, and I think that's one thing we still hold together. We're very proud of being a Marine and doing what we did. But as far as war and what went on there and what happened, and I don't think any of them really understand why today that we feel the way we do.
Right. A lot of confusion goes with it.
Sure.
If you could change something about the war, not that it didn't happen, but if you could change one thing, what would you change?
Well, we went into that. We always felt like we were held back when we were fighting. We couldn't. We were. A perfect example was Loon. Here we are, just south of Quezon, about 4 miles, and about 10, 12 miles from Laos, from Korak, Laos. And we were being hit by artillery from Korak, Laos, and were just pounding us. Casualties, one right after the other. And we weren't allowed to go back and send planes over there to attack that artillery piece because it was in Laos. And we weren't allowed to cross that border. That didn't make any sense to me, and never will to anybody. It's one of those political.
You're sitting ducks.
Exactly.
That doesn't make sense.
No.
But you could not retaliate.
We could not cross that line.
What did you do when you weren't fighting? Like you said, when I asked you about James, the soldiers liked to unwind when they weren't in the brush.
You'd go out, you'd be in the bush for anywhere from a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month, and come back. And you wear the same clothes. You might have another set of clothes in your pack if you were lucky. And you come back and you want to take a shower, and you want to clean up and get some clean clothes on, and you want to relax, listen to some music. Everybody had a radio, or some guys had a little cassette recorder that they could make up tapes and send back home. And there wasn't a whole lot to do, because when you got to the rear areas, there weren't places to go. You couldn't go to the movies or anything like that. It was just a place where you could get a hot meal and some clean clothes and rest.
And that was luxury.
Oh yeah, that was the best. You'd stay back there sometimes a week, 2 weeks, then back to the bush again.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever write letters home?
All the time, every chance I could get. My mother was real good about that. She wrote almost every day. Mothers are.
Yes. And you said you had some pictures to share?
Yeah. This is Captain Negrone, who retired as a lieutenant colonel. He lives in Surprise, Arizona, and he was our CO, commanding officer of Charlie Company during the Loon era. And he was probably one of the best COs in Vietnam, and he's very well respected and well liked still today.
Was he much older than the rest?
Yes, he was. He was what they called a Mustanger. He was in the Marine Corps as an enlisted man, got out, went back to college, graduated from the University of Miami in Ohio, and went back into the Officers Candidate School and became an officer. And when I met him, he was a captain. He made major. He received a Silver Star and was wounded on the Loon. And still one of my closest friends today. He lives out in Surprise, Arizona, fully retired. He was Marine Corps boxing champion at one time.
Wow.
Yep, quite a man.
That's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got several pictures here. This guy here was Benny Lerma. He was a Cajun from Louisiana. That picture was taken up at Jewel Inn. This is Buck Willingham, who was my fire team leader when I first got to Vietnam. He was from Maysville, Oklahoma. And there's nobody I ever met that's more country than that boy right there. He's a real country boy. and I still see him today. Good friend.
Does he
Ed
still
Lerma.
live up in Oklahoma?
He sure does, right there in Maysville. I mean, it's just like Mayberry RFD. So, this is a squad. This was Robert Rodriguez, I talked to him about earlier. He was a squad leader after Doil. This was not long after Doil was killed. We were back at what they called the washout, just south of Cantillon. And this was Rod's squad. And out of this squad, this man was killed on Loon. He was killed on Loon. Let me get my glasses here. He was wounded on Loon. Mike Tillery was killed on Loon. Rick Pop was wounded on Loon. He was killed on Loon. And Juan Garcia back here was killed on Loon.
How did that battle get its name?
That was the name of the LZ that we were building. It was called LZ Loon. And that's how that came about.
Did you continue building through the...
No, what happened on Loon is we arrived there on June the 4th, in 1968, to build this hill, this LZ, and to put artillery pieces on there so we could fight from, the artillery pieces would be manned at a later date and be used to be able to shoot farther out into the jungle. And the day that we got there, we started getting hit from Korak Laos. And then on the 5th, they really hit us hard. And then the morning of the 6th, they hit us with ground troops. And we fought for 13 hours before they pulled us out under emergency evacuation. We arrived on Loon on June the 1st, and Charlie Company had 167 men in the company. And when we regrouped on the morning of the 7th, at Vandegrift Combat Base, there were only 62 of us left.
Wow. So, are any of the men you fought with specifically mentioned in the book?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So it is based on a true story, not historical fiction?
It's a true story, yes.
Are you mentioned in the book? You are?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Well, thank you for sharing with us.
Sure.
A couple questions before we call it quits too.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us about maybe the maneuver you were on when Mr. Rader was killed?
Yes, like I say, we were, it was, I had only been there three weeks, and we were going up to what they called the fire break, which separated North and South Vietnam, the demilitarized zone, but they actually had a break there that they had taken bulldozers and cleared a swath about 200 or 300 yards wide from Cantillon to Julin. And on the north side of that break is where we were going to get there. They dropped us off just south of Cantillon, and we went through the jungle for like 2 days and marched up there. And there were like 1,100 of us, there was a battalion of us, and got up there to set up a security position up there so they could build another base behind us. And on June the 5th, or I think it was, I'm sorry, December the 4th, we moved a little farther north. And on the 5th, we had a lot of probing at night. Ambushes were going off, and you could hear them out there. You knew something was going to happen. Then on December the 6th, they sent out a company-sized patrol, and they got into contact in the middle of the afternoon. And they came back in. And they came back in, and they had taken several casualties. And that was the first dead Marine that I witnessed. And I was standing there, and they were walking by, and they were carrying him in a poncho. And that's when it set in me that it was very, very serious what was going on here.
Life and death.
Mm-hmm. And then a couple hours later, we were hit by mortar fire. And James was in a hole just to my east, probably about 30 feet. He was on a little rise from where I was at. And under the mortar attack, we were hit, I don't know how many rounds, 100 or so mortar rounds, before they hit us with ground troops. And James was wounded during the mortar attack. And I remember the corpsman going up there and trying to work on him and everything, and they got him between the barrages and the ground attack back to the CP, and was trying to get him out under evacuation, air vac. They brought in a helicopter, a CH-34, and as it was landing to get the medevac out, to get James and a couple of the other guys that had been hit, the North Vietnamese came up and shot that helicopter down. And it spun around and crashed on the LZ and caught fire. And they never got James out that night. And he succumbed to his wounds that night. Never got him out.
So it wasn't instant?
No, it wasn't instant. He was. They were working on him most of the night. Couldn't save him.
Any other questions?
What I was going to say too, what did you refer to him as? Do you call him, because we've seen some places where they call him Doyle, others they call him Jim.
Most of, in Vietnam, you always go by your last name or a nickname.
Okay.
And he was Rader.
Did you have any other stories about your service, your time of service, that you want to share?
Yeah, that's some, like I said, I met a lot of good guys, and I really cherish that memory of serving with them, and I enjoy seeing them. Like I was telling you earlier, they come to my house for a reunion. The first Saturday in March every year, there's a hunter's feast on Knott's Island. And like 1,600 guys come to this thing, and these guys come from all over, and I'm fortunate enough to have some friends that live on Knott's Island that own a hunting lodge. And they let me use the hunting lodge, and it sleeps 14 people. So it kind of works out real nice. They fly in from all over, drive in or whatever, and stay there for 2 or 3 days, and we catch up on old times, and it's good to see them.
Sounds nice.
I don't know what's like that. Did you ever get wounded?
Was I ever wounded?
Yeah.
No. We had about a 90% casualty rate in the company, and I was one of the ones that didn't get hit, thank God. But I had several of them were wounded 2 and 3 times. So.
What was I guess what would you feel as you would go into combat? Like, what was the experience like? Was it kind of just sheer chaos kind of situation?
I think the things that you really remember most is getting into that helicopter, and and he's taken to a place where you really don't want to go, and flying in the helicopter and looking at everybody and seeing that everybody's ready. And then once you get there, if it's a hot LZ, it starts right away, and if it's not, then you get into the bush and you just wait for something to happen. And you just need to be ready all the time. And when it does happen, I think that what set me off the most was it would be so quiet, and then it would be so loud, so quick, and you just begged for that sound to quit. And it was
We're not even awake. Well, we were until you heard that clip. Your iPad is they can't record anymore.
Okay.
And the battery on the camera just died, of course.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go talk to
Should we try and set up another iPad?
yeah, I'm going.
Okay.
I was 50%. Basic life. I'm gonna go look for a battery.
So were you facing mostly Viet Cong, or you said North Viet NVA mostly?
up north. It was all NVA.
Okay.
I mean, they were hardcore, very very good fighters. Yeah.
Were you there? You had a picture of a prisoner or a POW. Were you there when that shot was taken?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were.
You go forward with that one.
Oh, here's a
Towards him.
here's a sign of that's Cantien. That's a pretty neat story there. That's I'm sorry.
That was good.
I can get that.
Okay.
With this one. Face it towards Mr. What's your name, sir?
Terry.
Mr. Tillery. Go ahead.
That's the prisoner.
Is this one recorded?
The sign, as you came in, it talked about the place of angels, which was Cantien. And on the back, as you were coming out, I'll read it, what it says. It says, through this gate pass the world's finest fighting men. They wear a green uniform and they call themselves Marines, the place of angels. Helmets, flak jackets must be worn at all times, because it was the most northern base, took all the artillery. But on the other side, coming out of the base, the sign on the back of the sign, it said, next time bring beer.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they decide to put that on the back?
They wanted some beer. So over there, you did get 2 beers a day. You were supposed to, but nobody ever, very seldom did you get it. And if you got it, it was warm. So you'd run it down to the creek and stick it in the creek for an hour or so and cool it down a little bit. There was no such thing as ice. There was no such thing as electricity. We lived in these little 2 and 3 man bunkers, and the only thing you had was candlelight. That's what you used for writing letters at night or whatever, and you always wanted to make sure that your poncho hung over top of the door of your bunker so that you wouldn't leave light out, so the enemy couldn't see you at night. And, there were a lot of things that were different. And not only was the war bad, is the things that you fought under, the degree of the heat, as hot as it got. You went sometimes without water for a day or 2, and that'll drive you crazy. You can't get to, and when you drank your water, you got it out of creeks, or you got it out of a bomb crater that was rain filled, or anywhere you could get water. And then
You didn't much care by that point.
yes, exactly. And another thing that really bothered me were leeches. I hated leeches, but they had what they called ground leeches, not just water leeches, but ground leeches.
So they were everywhere.
Yeah. And you couldn't feel them on you. And all of a sudden you'd look at your sleeve, you'd have a big thing of blood, because they have an anticoagulant once they get on you, and it keeps you bleeding. And your pant leg would all be full of blood. But they'd get a hold of you. I remember one guy in front of me, he turned around, he had one on his neck. And he was pulling it, and the skin of his neck was coming out. You know, he's going, get this thing off me. If you took a cigarette and put it up close to the leech, he'd let go and then just burn it with a cigarette and throw it away. But those kind of things. Huh?
Interesting trick.
Yeah.
Were there any other questions?
We've kind of looked into the music from the time period too. Is there any that especially were some of your favorites that in country or out of country afterwards?
Yeah. You know, everybody liked music over there. That was a good thing to pass the time, and we were fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 guys in the platoon that actually had a little bit of background, either played in a band or you know, knew something about music, and we'd sit around and like the song Under the Boardwalk. Somebody might know the first verse or 2 of that, and then somebody else would go, I know that one, and then they'd pitch in, and everybody, before you know it, before I was there, we knew the whole song, and we'd all sing it together, and there was a lot of good music. I mean, some of the guys liked the Doors, and The other guys liked country, and a lot of them liked, you know, rock. So, and Motown was another big one that was really good at that time.
I think we listened to a song by The Doors. One student presented.
Mm-hmm.
I've had them look into different songs from the time period, and they each had to present one in the class and tell what it was made, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Well, I've asked all my questions.
Anything else you guys have? Well, we thank you for coming all the way out here for us.
Hey,
Yes,
happy
thank
to do
you.
it.
Yeah, I didn't
Happy to
realize
do it. I hope I helped you.
Yeah, this was a great help.
Thank
Sorry,
you
our
for
equipment
sharing.
was kind of shoddy here.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Is that book available in general bookstores like Barnes & Noble?
I don't know if it is or not, but I know you can order it from Amazon. You go on Amazon here. I think they've actually stopped publication on it. So, Jack did real well with it. He still does a lot of speaking engagements,
Oh, wow.
and it had his book signing. When he, I forgot to tell you this
Oh,
story.
yeah. Yeah, well,
This,
Just like,
This fellow's name was Tom Morrissey. Tom was from up in Massachusetts, up around the Boston area. And he was married before he came over to Vietnam. And his wife was pregnant. And he was killed on a loom. And he never got to see his son. And naturally, his son never got to see his father. And his mother and mother-in-law didn't get along. And somehow, during the years, his mother-in-law got custody of him, of the baby, young Tom Jr. And there was a lot of fighting in the family there. And the grandmother took over the baby and raised him as her, not her grandson, but her son. And she made the statement to her daughter-in-law. She said, "I want my baby back." She said, "You give me my baby back, and I'll give you yours." So she ended up raising this boy. He never knew his mother until he was in his early 40s. Never met his mother. Well, Jack, with the internet and everything, traced down his family. And he was living in Boston at the time too. He looked them up and he found them. And he found young Tom and his uncles, which were Tom's brothers, his siblings, met their family and all, and got to know them. And come to find out that young Tom had never met his mother. So Jack researched it and found his mother. And went to see her, got her side of the story. He knew the side of young Tom's side, and then went to his mother, and she told him the story of how his mother-in-law wouldn't let her see him at all. And Jack decided to invite young Tom down to one of our Hunters Feast reunions. It was 2 years ago. And he came down to meet the guys that served with his father when he was killed. And he walked around, and just a nice young man. And in the meantime, Jack had gone back to his wife and told her what was happening here. And his wife took all his dad's personal belongings and put them in a box and gave them to Jack to give to young Tom when he was down at the reunion. And both of them were staying at my house. And one evening after dinner, we sat down on the couch, and Jack came out and gave young Tom this box and said, "Here, your mother wanted you to have this." And what it was Tom's watch, his Purple Heart, and his Bronze Star that he won in Vietnam. And he got real emotional, and the next day, all the guys heard about the story that were at the reunion and told him, "You need to find your mother. and get in touch with her. So that happened 2 years ago. And they were just as tight as gold now. So something good did come up.
That is good. They got reunited.
Yep.
Is there a significance of your bracelet?
Yeah, that's, I wear this, I call it a honor bracelet. And it has two names on it that, Mike Tillery, who was killed on loan, was my best friend, and another fellow, Eddie Towsley, who I went in the Marine Corps with, and he was killed at Quezon, and I wear their names.
Thank you again
Yeah,
for
thank
sharing
you.
with us. I can't express our thanks.
Glad I could do it.
And we get a finished product together, we can send you a copy of everything too.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, we're writing a biography on Corporal Rader, but we'd also wouldn't mind putting one together about you also for, because it's,
Well, I wish I knew more about him so I could tell
Yeah.
you, but I never got the chance to get to know him that well.
yeah, but it's just fascinating to have you, to come in and speak with us. We appreciate it.
Good.
Do we have your email address, right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Do we have your mailing address?
No, I'll give it to you though.
Okay.
Okay.
It's 204 Fentress, F-E-N-T-R-E-S-S,
FEN.
Drive. And it's Knott's Island, K-N-O-T-T-S.
Island.
North Carolina.